My name doesn't matter. What matters is what happened to me on a Monday morning in a glass office building in Chicago. The day my boss looked me in the eye, in front of my entire team, and said, "You're done here. Clean out your desk." No warning. No real reason. Just 5 years of my life, thrown in the trash in front of 20 coworkers who had to watch me walk out carrying a cardboard box like I was some kind of criminal. He thought that was the end of my story. He had no idea it was the beginning of his. Because 18 months later, the company he built from nothing, the company with his name on the building, didn't exist anymore. And I was the reason why. If you love stories about quiet people who get pushed too far, stay till the end, because this one gets very satisfying. And if you enjoy stories like this, hit subscribe, because we post new true-to-life stories every single week. Let me take you back to the beginning, so you understand exactly who I was before that Monday morning changed everything. I'll call myself Claire for this story. I was 28 years old, living in a small apartment outside Chicago, and I worked as the senior operations manager at a mid-sized logistics and supply company. We'll call it Harrow Freight Solutions. It wasn't a huge corporation, but it wasn't small either. About 200 employees, offices in 3 states, and a founder CEO named Richard Harrow who had built the whole thing from a single truck and a dream 22 years earlier. I joined Harrow Freight straight out of college. I was hungry, I was organized, and I genuinely loved solving problems. Within 5 years, I had worked my way up from a junior coordinator to running the entire operations department. I built systems that saved the company hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. I trained half the staff. I was the person people called at midnight when a shipment went wrong, because they knew I would fix it without complaining. I wasn't just an employee. I was, in many ways, the backbone that kept that company running smoothly behind the scenes. Richard Harrow, my boss, was a different story. He was the type of man who loved being seen as the genius behind everything, even when the real work was done by people like me. He was charming in meetings, especially with investors and clients. But behind closed doors, he was controlling, quick to anger, and allergic to any credit that wasn't pointed directly at him. For years, I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself that as long as I did good work, eventually it would be recognized. I told myself that loyalty and hard work always pay off in the end. I was wrong. And I was about to learn that lesson in the most humiliating way possible. Looking back now, I can see the warning signs so clearly. At the time, I just thought I was being paranoid. It started about 8 months before I was fired. Richard hired his nephew, a 24-year-old named Tyler, as a special projects coordinator. Nobody in the company understood what Tyler actually did. He showed up late, left early, and spent most of his time in Richard's office instead of at his own desk. Slowly, I started noticing that decisions I used to make, decisions that were literally part of my job description, were being made without me. Vendor contracts I had negotiated were suddenly being reviewed by Tyler. Meetings I used to lead were quietly moved to times when I had scheduling conflicts. I brought it up to Richard directly, in what I thought was a calm, professional way. I asked him if there had been a change in my role that I wasn't aware of. He brushed it off completely. He told me I was reading too much into things, and that I should focus on my actual job instead of office politics. That phrase stuck with me, focus on my actual job, as if questioning being pushed out of my own responsibilities wasn't part of my actual job. A few weeks later, I found out that Tyler had been given access to the financial dashboards I had built myself, dashboards that tracked shipment costs, vendor pricing, and profit margins across every branch. Nobody asked my permission. Nobody even told me. I just noticed one day that my access had quietly changed from admin to view only. I want you to remember that detail, because it becomes very important later in this story. I started keeping records after that. Emails, screenshots, dates and times of conversations. Not because I had some master plan yet, I didn't. I did it because something in my gut told me I needed to protect myself. Call it instinct. Call it experience. But something felt very wrong. Here's the part of the story that still makes my stomach turn, even now. About 2 months before I was fired, Harrow Freight landed our biggest client contract in company history. A partnership with a national retail chain that would have doubled our shipping volume. I was the one who had spent 4 months building the relationship, flying out for meetings, adjusting our pricing models, and personally guaranteeing service levels that convinced them to sign with us instead of 2 much bigger competitors. The day the contract was signed, Richard stood up in the all-company meeting and gave a big speech about vision and leadership and how he had built the relationship that landed this deal. He didn't mention my name once. Not once, in a 15-minute speech about a deal I had personally closed. I sat there in that meeting, clapping along with everyone else, feeling something inside me quietly break. That night I made a decision. Not a dramatic one. A simple one. I decided I would start looking for a new job. Quietly. Professionally. I wasn't going to burn any bridges. I wasn't going to make a scene. I was just going to protect myself and eventually walk away on my own terms. What I didn't know was that Richard and Tyler had already started building a case to push me out first, before I could leave on my own. See, here's something I learned about people like Richard. They can sense when someone stops being afraid of them. And people like that don't like it when they lose control of the story. Somewhere in his mind, I believe he decided that if anyone was going to be the hero of this company's story, it was going to be him, not the quiet operations manager who actually kept things running. So he started building a paper trail against me. Small write-ups for things that had never been an issue before. A verbal warning for being 5 minutes late to a meeting I was never actually invited to. A note in my file claiming I had difficulty accepting feedback, based on the one time I had calmly disagreed with Tyler in a meeting. I didn't know any of this was happening in real time. I only found out about it later, during the process that would eventually bring the whole company down. Let's get to the moment this story is named after. It was a Monday morning in October. I remember it so clearly because I had just gotten off a call with our biggest client, the one from that contract I mentioned, resolving a shipping delay before it became a real problem. I hung up the phone feeling good, feeling useful, feeling like myself. 10 minutes later, Richard walked out of his office with Tyler and our HR coordinator trailing behind him. He didn't ask me to step into a private room. He didn't pull me aside. He walked straight to my desk, in the middle of the open office floor, where at least 20 of my coworkers could see and hear everything. He said, and I remember these words exactly, "Claire, this isn't working out. We're letting you go, effective immediately." I remember asking him why. I remember my voice staying calm, even though my hands were shaking under the desk. He said something vague about cultural fit and performance concerns. When I asked for specifics, he said HR would send over documentation. I looked around at my coworkers. Some looked down at their desks, afraid to make eye contact. A few looked genuinely shocked. Sarah, one of the coordinators I had trained myself, had tears in her eyes. HR handed me a small cardboard box. I was given 15 minutes to collect my personal belongings while a security guard for an operations manager who had never had so much as a formal complaint in 5 years, stood a few feet away. I walked out of that building with a box in my hands, my badge deactivated behind me, past coworkers who didn't know what to say. Nobody stopped me. Nobody defended me. The parking lot felt like it stretched out for miles. I sat in my car for almost 20 minutes before I could even turn the key. I wasn't crying, not exactly. I was just empty. 5 years of loyalty, of late nights, of building something I actually cared about, gone in less time than it takes to make a cup of coffee. But here's the thing about hitting a moment like that. Once the shock wears off, something else starts to grow in its place. For me, that something was clarity. I want to be honest with you about something. My first instinct was not revenge. My first instinct was survival. I needed a new job. I needed to pay rent. I needed to figure out how to explain to future employers why I had been let go from a company I had given 5 years of my life to. For about 2 weeks, I did what most people would do. I updated my resume. I reached out to old contacts. I tried to move forward. But something kept eating at me. It was that detail I mentioned earlier, my financial dashboard access being quietly downgraded months before I was fired. Why would they need to lock me out of financial data if this was really about performance or cultural fit? So I did something that changed everything. I called an old friend from college, a woman named Monica, who had become a corporate compliance attorney. I told her the whole story over coffee, expecting her to just offer sympathy. Instead, she asked me a question that stopped me cold. Claire, when you had access to those financial dashboards, did you ever notice anything unusual in the vendor pricing? And that's when I remembered something I had genuinely forgotten in the chaos of getting fired. About 4 months before I lost my job, I had noticed something strange. Certain vendor contracts, the ones being handled by Tyler, Richard's nephew, were priced significantly higher than market rate, routed through a private logistics broker I had never heard of. At the time, I assumed it was just inefficient management. I made a note of it and moved on, because it wasn't officially my responsibility to question vendor selection. Monica's eyes lit up in a way I'll never forget. She asked if I still had any of that data. I told her I had exported some reports to my personal email months earlier. Not for any sinister reason, just because I liked keeping backup records of my own work in case something happened to the company systems, which is honestly just good practice for anyone in operations. That night, I opened my personal email and found the exports. And when I actually sat down and looked at them carefully, with fresh eyes and no distractions, the pattern became impossible to ignore. Let me explain what I found in simple terms, because this is the part of the story that changes everything. The private logistics broker that Tyler had been routing certain contracts through was charging Harrow Freight nearly 40% above standard market rates for warehousing and last-mile delivery services in 2 states. At first glance, that just looks like bad business. Overpaying a vendor happens. It's not illegal to make a bad deal. But then Monica helped me look deeper. Using public business registration records, all public information, nothing hacked, nothing stolen, we discovered that this private broker was registered under an LLC that had been created only 10 months earlier. And the registered agent of that LLC, the legal contact person on file, was Tyler's wife. Let that sink in for a moment. Richard's nephew had been steering company contracts toward a shell company owned by his own wife, overcharging Harrow Freight by tens of thousands of dollars every single month, and pocketing the difference. And when I had gotten too close to noticing it, when my dashboard access showed exactly these kinds of anomalies, my access was quietly taken away. Then, when I still didn't stop asking the right kinds of questions in meetings, I was pushed out entirely under a vague, dishonest excuse. This wasn't about my performance. This was never about cultural fit. This was about making sure the one person in that company who was sharp enough to notice the pattern was removed before she connected all the dots. I sat there in my apartment that night with my laptop open, staring at spreadsheets, feeling something shift inside me. This wasn't about hurting Richard out of anger anymore. This was about the truth. About 22 years of a company being quietly hollowed out from the inside by people who thought nobody was paying attention. I decided right there that I was going to pay attention. Very, very carefully. Here is where I have to be careful because I want to tell you exactly what I did and exactly what I didn't do, because everything I did was legal, documented, and done the right way. I never hacked anything. I never stole anything I didn't already legitimately have. I never lied. I simply followed the truth carefully and let it speak for itself. Monica connected me with a forensic accountant she trusted, a quiet, methodical man who specialized in exactly this kind of corporate fraud case. Over the next 6 weeks, we built a timeline using publicly available business records, the reports I had legitimately exported during my employment, and pricing benchmarks from the logistics industry. The picture that formed was even bigger than I first realized. It wasn't just one shell company. There were 3, all linked to people connected to Richard and Tyler, all skimming money off different parts of the business: warehousing, fuel surcharges, and even employee benefits administration. Over 22 years, Richard Harrow had built a company on hard work and real relationships. But somewhere in the last 2 years, greed had crept in, and instead of growing the business the honest way, he and his nephew had started quietly stealing from it. Money that should have gone to employee raises, to reinvestment, to the people who showed up every single day and did real work. Once we had a clear, well-documented picture, Monica advised me on the right way to handle it. Not through some dramatic public confrontation. Not through social media. through the proper legal channels. A formal complaint filed with state regulators, combined with a report to the company's actual outside auditors and their insurance underwriter, who had every legal right to know their client was being defrauded from within. I also, on Monica's advice, consulted with an employment attorney about my own termination. Because once the fraud pattern became clear, it also became clear that I had very likely been fired specifically because I was getting too close to discovering it, which, depending on how you look at it, raised some very serious legal questions of its own. I'm not going to pretend I orchestrated some elaborate scheme like in a movie. The truth is simpler and honestly more satisfying because it's real. Once the regulators and auditors had the documentation, they did their jobs. An independent audit was launched. When auditors started asking Tyler and Richard direct questions about vendor selection and those shell companies, the story they gave didn't hold up under basic scrutiny. Auditors are trained to notice exactly the kind of pattern we had already laid out clearly for them. Within a few months, Harrow Freight's biggest client, yes, the one I had personally closed the deal with, got word through their own legal and compliance department that the company had significant financial irregularities under investigation. Big corporate clients cannot legally or reputationally afford to be associated with a supplier under active fraud investigation. They quietly terminated the contract. That contract had represented nearly a third of the company's total revenue. Once one major client pulled out, others started asking questions too. Banks reviewing the company's line of credit grew uneasy. Vendors who were owed money, because cash flow had been quietly drained by years of overpaying shell companies, started demanding payment. The company that had taken Richard Harrow 22 years to build began falling apart in a matter of months. Not because of anything dramatic I personally did to attack it, but because the truth, once it was properly documented and placed in front of the right people, simply could not be ignored anymore. Tyler and his wife eventually faced legal consequences for the fraudulent shell company scheme. Richard, while never proven to have directly orchestrated the fraud himself, was found by auditors to have been negligent in oversight for years, which was more than enough to destroy his reputation in an industry built entirely on trust and relationships. Within 18 months of the day I was fired, Harrow Freight Solutions closed its doors permanently. 200 employees lost their jobs, which I want to be honest with you, is the one part of this story that never felt like a total victory to me. Good people, people like Sarah who had tears in her eyes the day I was walked out, lost their livelihoods too, through no fault of their own. But here's what I've come to understand. That company was already dying slowly from the inside, being hollowed out by greed. I didn't kill something healthy. I simply stopped protecting people who never once protected me, and let the truth do what truth eventually does when it's given the chance. You might be wondering what happened to me after all of this. The employment attorney I mentioned earlier did pursue a wrongful termination claim on my behalf, based specifically on evidence that I had been fired in retaliation for internally questioning irregular vendor practices, which, depending on your state, can fall under whistleblower protection laws. That case was resolved through a private settlement, which allowed me to stay on my feet financially during the hardest, most uncertain months of my life. But honestly, the money was never really the point for me. The point was something much simpler. I needed to know that doing the right thing, staying calm, staying organized, and trusting the truth over panic actually meant something. Today, I run my own small logistics consulting business. I help small and mid-sized companies build the exact kind of transparent financial and operational systems that Harrow Freight abandoned. Ironically, some of my first clients were former Harrow Freight vendors who remembered how honestly I had always dealt with them, even during the chaos of the company's collapse. I still think about that Monday morning sometimes. The cardboard box, the security guard, the silence of my coworkers. For a long time, that memory made me feel small. Now, it reminds me of exactly how far quiet persistence can actually take a person when they refuse to disappear quietly. If there's one thing I want you to take from this story, it's this: being fired unfairly, being humiliated in front of people who once respected you, can feel like the absolute end of everything in the moment. It felt that way for me too, sitting in my car in that parking lot, unable to even turn the key. But sometimes, the version of you that walks out of that building with a cardboard box isn't defeated. She's just getting started. and she doesn't even know it yet. I didn't take down an entire company out of blind anger. I did it by staying calm, staying organized, protecting myself with real documentation, and trusting people who knew how to handle the truth the right way. Real revenge, isn't loud. It's patient. It's careful. And more often than not, it's simply the truth, finally being allowed to see daylight. If you were ever fired unfairly, if you were ever pushed out of something you built with your own two hands by someone who only cared about protecting themselves, I hope this story reminded you of something important. The truth doesn't disappear just because someone in power wants it to. So that's the story of how one Monday morning firing, meant to humiliate me and make me disappear quietly, ended up bringing down an entire company built on 22 years of hard work and eventually hidden greed. It's a reminder that staying calm, staying honest, and trusting the truth can be more powerful than any angry outburst ever could be. Wherever you are in your own journey right now, whether things feel unfair or completely out of your control, remember this: quiet strength always outlasts loud dishonesty. If you enjoyed this story, hit that subscribe button for more real, powerful stories just like this one, dropping every single week. Let me know in the comments. Have you ever had a boss like Richard? I read every single comment, so tell me your story below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.